This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they've faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. In this episode, we're talking to David Campbell. David is a partner at Brand Rebellion and a passionate workforce strategist. We dive deep into the art of employee engagement, workplace culture, and how businesses can truly empower their teams. You'll hear about creative ways to keep staff motivated, the secret to building trust in hybrid workplaces, and why people is the ultimate business differentiator. Let's get into it. David, thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today.
Thanks, Savan. Lovely to be here.
For those that are unfamiliar with your business, Brand Rebellion, and obviously that don't know who you are, let's take us through the journey. Go back as far back as you can and tell us about your professional journey, your upbringing, and then eventually how you got into Brand Rebellion.
Yeah, well, I was born Wagga Wagga in New South Wales. I moved to Canberra with the family in early primary school, finished college in the early 2000s, and then went to the Australian Business Academy, where I did an advanced diploma in management and one in marketing as well. Began a double degree in management and psychology at university. At the time, I was working nightclubs, pubs, sports clubs, and quickly worked my way up to managerial status in those places, working as many hours, as many days as I could. And I think from an understanding of people and relationships and engagement, that's been really beneficial to where I am now. And then decided it was time to build a career. So took on a role in information and records management at PwC, a large multinational consultancy. We quickly digitized the work I was doing, but I found a real passion for problem solving and driving efficiencies. This idea of problem solving and how you can relate methods to anything from this example to buying a house, and expressed interest in management consulting, completed the vacationer program, then became graduate, started moving up the ladder, asked for any and every opportunity to learn, gained experience across a lot of industries in business consulting, strategy, data and analytics, financial, project management, change, but everything kept coming back to this focus on workforce and people consulting. And I was part of creating the workforce and change team there that grew and grew fast. And 10 years and 2 kids later, at the start of 2022, my wife and I, Bryden, we created Brand Rebellion.
There you go. That is an interesting journey. You've a lot of learning there. So you must love learning. Is that something that you're really into? You enjoy consuming content education?
It's a very interesting question because now when I have purpose, I love learning and quite often absorb yourself in something, whether it's, you're coming on the wonderful Bottom Line podcast. So you listen to that as much as you can and think about Savan, who's going to interview you, and his background, or you have a new engagement with a new industry you're not quite familiar with. You look at the people and their career and their backgrounds, but you absorb yourself into that. And then also the technical work that you're going to be doing for those to become as proficient in as many things as you can as possible, but also to be able to know that organization as well, if not better than everyone in that. When I look in my early years, when I started uni, I didn't really enjoy it. And I think that's because it didn't resonate with me. I was just there to do a degree to tick a box. So I did end up taking a bit of time off it. And it wasn't until I started working in similar fields and all of a sudden a qualification was important to show, hey, you could dedicate yourself to something, but also the learnings in a practical application, that I went back and full-time work, full-time uni, was dedicated. And I think that's the beauty of education, is really when it resonates with you and you have purpose behind it, you're going to invest a lot more time. And in organizations, at the moment with digital transformation, AI, everything that's happening, we really need to be agile and be able to adapt. And one way to skill the workforce is through this ongoing training to make them adaptable. And the interesting side note to all of that is in businesses, people are really the only unique differentiator. And for organizations, it's how do I get the best out of my unique differentiator? And for individuals thinking of themselves selfishly, it's how can I do the best in case my role or position might change moving forward? Or if I'm going to go somewhere else, how can I have a CV that's as flexible as possible?
I love that. I love that comment. People are usually the only differentiator in business. And I can reflect on that, obviously, running a professional services organization where, the product is produced by people and where the product is consistent. It's sort of accounting, tax, finance. It's same everywhere. We follow the same tax law. So I can see, I love that people are usually the only differentiator. So let's talk about brand rebellion. So 2022, that's sort of halfway through COVID, you and your wife, Bryden, have gone out and started this business. Tell us about what does brand rebellion do, the services you provide.
Brand Rebellion is a brand and workforce consultancy founded in Feb 2022. Bryden has a background in senior brand and marketing roles. And for me, the draw is people and strategy consulting with a particular focus on workforce. It was quite interesting because there was a lot of similarities in our work of what we did, but until we started talking about the business more and more, we probably didn't understand quite how similar they were from an attraction, engagement, retention perspective of both. Her work looks outward facing, mine generally looks inwards. They focus a lot on brand, looks at perception. As a challenge for workforce is generally productivity. So really the idea was we wanted to create organizations that people want to align themselves with, either through employment or through consumerism. And the key to all of this is really that strategic alignment and how you can enhance market perception and workforce productivity and drive workforce productivity. And then how strong is your value exchange and the value you're offering? Because if I'm going to an organization, they might have this strategic plan, everything might feed down to the actual position description, but what's the value that I'm getting? I understand what you want from me, but how's that reciprocated? Does it meet the rewards, benefits, my needs, the structures around me to succeed in what I do? So we're deliberately a bit of a different structure from the usual consulting archetype. We have the creativity and ideation traditionally sought in agencies, and the professional and strategic problem solving typically seen in consultancies. And rebel, what does that mean? It's about rebelling against mediocrity, striving for excellence in both brand and workforce dynamics. So, some of the things we really push around that are this idea of fostering innovation and creativity, coming back to the education example we talked about previously, breaking down silos, empowering people, because we all know when we own something and we're accountable to an autonomous environment, we're empowered to do more. And challenging conventional thinking, both brand and workforce don't have a one size fits all solution. Everything needs to be tailored. You're targeting different people, you're wanting to engage different people. People do have different needs, backgrounds, wants. So it's really about finding what that best solution is for that organization and going forth. And the Brand Rebellion services, the brand team predominantly focus on brand strategy, graphic design, and marketing as a service. The brand strategy can be anything from your brand promise, your purpose, your identity, all the way through to the other end of the spectrum on the logo and style side. Design, we absolutely love across everything we do, and it is crucial. When something is striking, it's easy to engage with, it draws you in, and quite often you can look at a design and you look at it a bit closer and there's contours, there's intricacies, and when you talk to the designer or the owners of that logo or that design, they'll tell you a narrative and a story and why the colors are there and why it means so much more to them. And then marketing as a service, it's really a lever to building and growing relationships, campaigns, social media, audience profiling. And then we move on to the people and strategy team, which is where I am. Predominantly, that's workforce planning, which is about aligning people strategies to business goals. And there's a range of initiatives such as org design, employee value propositions, culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, attraction, retention, HR solutions, a lot of things that fall and a lot of avenues that are underneath that, predominantly because people are complex, work in the workplace is complex. So there needs to be a lot of avenues to explore depending on the situation.
Awesome. Well, let's go to the area that you're in, workplace planning and employee engagement. How do you define employee engagement in today's evolving workplace, and why is it more critical than ever?
Employee engagement, the more engaged people are, the more motivated they are, the more productive they are, the more loyal they are, the more they probably directly contribute to an organization's success. And from an individual perspective, when you're engaged in something, you're not getting the Sunday scaries before turning up to Monday at work. You want to be there. You want to learn more, and through education, you can be agile and be able to contribute to more things across the organization. But generally, the more engaged people are, the more autonomous and outcomes based organizations can be. And in the end, that affects the productivity. And it's quite easy to lose employee engagement as well, generally through to things such as trust or lack of buy in, not having ownership over certain things. These engagement challenges come, and then quite easily you'll see divisions across the organization.
Awesome. Now, you would have implemented workplace planning at a large scale in transformations and so on. Can you walk us through one of the most challenging projects you've worked on, and how did you keep employees engaged? Tell us through that journey of a story that you've been involved in where you saw some interesting things in keeping the staff engaged through that training.
Yeah, and I think with workforce planning, that's an absolute critical part of it. You sort of trying to drive this alignment between your talent supply and demand and shaping that workforce to meet your business strategy or transformation or any sort of modernization outcome. So there's quite a methodology that follows to get there around the importance of that strategic plan, defining those business goals so then you can align your people towards that, looking at current state, identifying those risks and opportunities, and then those strategies for future state. And it's one of those where you can do all the research and look through all the plans, the reports, structure charts, anything with the organization. Then you start doing your data modeling. But if you're not engaging and listening to the workforce and to the organization about what the actual key risks are that are stopping them from being their best selves in the environment, then you're not going to have anything that people are going to want to take ownership or buy into after you drop that plan on them. So through that process, you do a lot of interviews, you do a lot of risk workshops, and you try and have those one-on-one conversations where you're asking people across different areas of the business and leaders, what are these pain points? How do you see this workforce or this workplace changing over the next 5 years? What are some of these external factors that are going to affect us? And what are the biggest workforce challenges that you see at the moment that are going to stop us from getting to that future state where we want to get to? And the hard thing is, as well, is that you come in and you do this engagement, and through large organizations you have a number of recommendations that go down. So if there's not ownership over those, everything's going to fall down very quickly, or even if it doesn't make sense why some of those are in place. So it all starts from engaging at the start. This is workforce planning 101. This is what we want to try and do. The engagement of individuals' insights, what they feel like their organization needs to look like moving forward, where they feel it could be best placed, and then to that buy-in, to that implementation, which is the challenging part in itself.
Yeah, no, that's great advice there on the one-on-one, the conversations that you should have and the questions you should ask. You mentioned empowering people. Obviously, some of those things you've touched on and keeping them engaged. Talk about empowering people. Sometimes it's an easy word to say as leaders. We need to empower our people to embrace change. We've got to empower them to make their own decisions and so on and so forth. What are your tips on business owners that feel that empowering people is a big, important part of their business? How do we do that?
It's a challenge, and I think you have a solid foundation of workforce structures, but it all comes back to trust and accountability. If they're clear defined roles and responsibilities, if you can see how the overall arching strategy of an organization fills down to your division or your business unit or your branch and section, and then in turn, how you're contributing to that and how you can own that, then you're more empowered to either to speak up, to look at different ways to innovate, to really drive that forward. But also, I think the biggest thing is probably outside of the trust and accountability is listening. Your workforce is going to tell you what they're not happy with. And an example of this is our employee value proposition that we did. And only being a business that's 2.5 years in, we wanted the individuals to determine and to tell us what was important to them. So we set up the room, butcher's papers everywhere. We had things like policies, well-being, learning and development, the financial terms, leave, all of these different things, and gave everyone post-it notes and said, write on all of them, all the things that you want to get. So the whole team sat down, they filled out all the post-it notes. We had a lot. And then after that, it was, here's your 10 to 15 sticky dots. Go put it on the ones that are important to you. Understanding that money or the budget for this is finite as well, and that can be spent however you want. Tell us what's important to you. So the team came back with things like birthday leave, progressive policies, team retreats, Christmas vouchers, team merch, flexibility in their work schedule and the autonomy to do that. And things like they wanted flexible learning. So now the whole team has LinkedIn learning, and depending on where they are and how much capacity they have, they can drive that themselves. But the interesting one that fell out of it was we couldn't quite decide on if we wanted more money for well-being or for home office improvements. So we've got this thing called a spin to win, and every fortnight we do a BR does BR, which is Brand Rebellion does beers and reflections. And in that, we talk to the team about our values and say who's been living the values, what have been your challenges over the last fortnight, what's something great that you want to share with the team, and what are our learnings and improvements. And then every 2 months, we bring out the wheel, we spin it up, and we see are people going to get a $250 wellbeing voucher? Are we going to have a team adventure? Are we going to have a team dinner? Are they going to have a $250 voucher towards petrol and parking? Whatever it is. And at the start of every year, we change that. The team changes, people's needs in life changes. So that's just one more way of showing the organization when there's something that's meaningful to them, that you can act on it and try and act on it quickly to support them to be their best selves at work.
I love that. Beers and reflection. And I love the wheel. So it's about employee engagement there, right? You're really focusing on getting them outside of their comfort zone, getting in front of an audience of their peers, talking about something that happened in that fortnight that reflects back to the company's values, a challenging conversation they may have had, or whatever it is, and talking through maybe even a success story. So, just on that, do you randomly pick employees that will do that, or is it someone is selected, or there's a story that someone wants to tell? They get interviewed, talk through it, and then they spin the wheel. Take us through a little bit more in depth how that really works.
Yeah, so the spin the wheel is a very fair process where we take it in terms. The first employee of the organization's at the top of the list, and then we move down the order. And if we get to the point where everyone's spun, we go back to the start of it all. So
So you take that in turns.
we take that in turns. But in terms of the fortnightly catch ups, not everyone has to speak or contribute or do a value share every week. And our values are driven, authentic, resourceful, and lively. And if you see someone that has reflected those behaviors in that period, or you want to call out times where you might have done it as well, that's the avenue. And it changes whether or not the people are having beers or if we're having waters, but the reflection's always there. And I think as a team, especially a small team, us reflecting on how we can be better, but also some amazing things that we've done, and as a team call out people living the values is a great thing. And another example of being values led is we've got a 12-month tactical plan for our marketing efforts that we want to do over the next 12 months, and the seasons are aligned to each one of those different values. So at the moment we're just hitting into our lively period, so you have 3 focus points for each month all related to that. And it might be about doing more networking events. It might be about rewriting case studies. It might be around talking about some social proof and good news stories that have come about, but engaging with previous partners that we haven't seen for a little while. So using that time to reflect on how important our values are, but aligning those with everything that we do in business and not just using them as boundaries.
So many takeaways from that. I love that the sessions that you do, yeah, the beers and reflection, are connected to the values of the business. So when you do a shout out or give examples of people doing stuff, it's related back to the values that you're trying to live by. And I really like there's 4 values there and you've split it up. It's like seasons, like, spring, summer, autumn, winter. It's kind of, okay, we're in the lively season now. And so, the theme becomes lively and things around that. So I really like that. It's like being creative. And sometimes leaders, we need to think a little bit creatively in order to get employee engagement. So I love what you've done there. But there would be some challenges, right? One of the things in our business, we've moved into a really nice office. We're very fortunate that we have a high level of engagement in the sense that the staff do come into our office quite a lot. We still have a flexible working from arrangement, but we do have a lot of people come to the office. But one of the things that we do that's similar to the beers and reflection is we make it compulsory for staff to come in on a Friday. And the reason we did that is one of our values is fun. And Fridays are the most fun day. It's casual Friday. We actually finish work at 4 o'clock. So you work 1 hour less, and technically you should work 1 hour less when you're in the office. And if you're at home, you should continue to work till 5 or what it is. But we stop work at 4. We have our call it the Friday shout out, and very similar to what you guys do. And but we want it to be compulsory. Come in casual, have fun. We're gonna have the drinks on the Friday. We want you to build connection. How do you, at Brand Rebellion and your clients, navigate through the challenges of a working from home environment? Or if you did get a client that has a business that's 100% from working from home, how have you been able to be creative enough? Or how do we do this in a more hybrid world?
Yeah, and I love that example of what you guys do as a team. Sounds like a very fun place to be.
Yeah, it's good. It's not bad.
I mean, it's challenging, and pretty much the majority of engagements we're on at the moment has some element of remote working and a lot of elements of flexibility. And the remote working in itself is a challenge, and it sort of comes back down to that productivity and some of these ideas around productivity used to be that you could see someone at a desk and you'd know between 9 to 5 that means that they're working. Now, if someone's online, unless you're moving to an outcomes or results driven business, that's a very hard thing to monitor. So it goes back to that engagement, empowering individuals to understand their role and to own that and drive it forward. From a flexibility perspective, it's wonderful when you can pick up your kids at a certain time, if you can care for someone, if you've got a doctor's appointment, because that creates a work life balance. But again, you have to own your role and have a strong managerial relationship to be able to have that trust that you will still deliver that work. Otherwise, we're going to move back to 9 to 5. I'm going to watch you the whole time. But it's also about where are our regular touch points. A lot of organizations might fall down and think, okay, well, everyone's remote, everyone's going to sort it out. But some people have other people living with them, so they might want an extra excuse to get out. Other people might be really lonely and not have the same sort of connections outside of work that you have. So regular touch points, even if it's a 15-minute stand up in the morning or you haven't heard from someone for a while, send them a message, how's it going? Get on the chat, see someone's face. But also from a creative perspective, having some of these wonderful tools online where you can still workshop and do things all online together and give everyone a voice. But I think the main delineation or differentiator should be when we're online and we're remote, what's the work that we can get done most productively from there versus in the office? And generally, the office falls back to things that are typically more creative around a whiteboard, people throwing ideas out, not having such time constraints. Whereas when you're spending time by yourself, you can sit down, do documents, get your chargeables, whatever it is, and just sort of hit some of those targets.
This is a question more for me and an advice for me. I don't know whether it's our staff, but I've been doing this for 25. I've been an accountant for 25 years, partner for 15. And I feel maybe it's a little bit of the industry, but I reckon there's enough sample size to say I think there's maybe an industry issue. But one of the question really is here, we have management groups, we have leaders, we have up and coming leaders, we have different sections in our organization. And I find when we are doing creative work, so let's say we get the management group and we're trying to problem solve, or we're going through a report and we want interaction by the staff. Over the journey, my view is that, and this could be the wrong view, but I find that accountants just would prefer to stay quiet. And I thought maybe it was a cultural thing in the office, but this has been going on for 25 years. We've had partners come and go, leaders come and go, staff come and go. And I feel like if we ran the exercise that you did with the butcher's paper and this token, I think that would work. That would create this accountability. So that's that creative part. I get frustrated sometimes when I get managers that lead teams. We get them in a room and we ask them to participate in advice and or problem solve something, and we get just crickets. What am I doing wrong there, Dave? There's something wrong, right? You can't. It's how do you induce that collaborative discussion when it's something creative when we're problem solving?
I mean, and it could be a certain personality type that's in there, and they might express themselves in completely different ways. I think the problem will be if you ever stop trying.
I like that.
So you keep coming up with different ways, and maybe it's an individual thing. We've seen a couple of things where, in terms of being creative and expressing some character traits about a brand, you talk about things that relate a bit more. It's okay, well, what sort of car would we be? What sort of fast food chain would we be? And so potentially you bring it back to the numbers. Put something on charts, play battleships, have things that are important to each other where you think of something that is so out there that people are engaged. But the key thing is for them to understand the intention and the outcomes of that session and then relate it back to something that you know is important or meaningful. Do they all love sport? You know, are there certain terms that you generally use in the fields that you work in? Make it more of a merger and acquisition if you're acquiring different things. And I think bring those sort of creative elements into that overarching strategy development. And some people take a long time to warm up, and some people are introverted. But if you can also set people individual tasks as well as group tasks, and then give everyone the opportunity to speak on it, that goes a long way too, because otherwise the same voices are very strong the whole way through.
Okay, that sounds cool. So in workforce transformation, there's often a focus on efficiency at the cost of employee well-being. Can driving operational efficiency or prioritizing satisfaction truly coexist? Or is there always a trade-off between the two?
They can definitely coexist. I think the happier, healthier, more engaged workforce you have, the more they're trusted, they're accountable, the more they're going to drive and hit some of your productivity measures. And the productivity measures can be quite varying as well. And from a workforce perspective, can be quite hard to determine. Things like task completion, widgets in and out, revenue per employee, you know, how much time are people spending on high value core tasks versus admin or non-admin? I mean, a lot of organizations use things like utilizations rates, but what about the things like new initiatives or innovations, or from an employee engagement perspective, if those things are increasing, what are our engagement surveys look like? And one of my favorites is always using unscheduled absence or absenteeism, turnover rates, and those sort of things. Because generally, if people are happy and they're driven in a workforce, they're probably not going to leave. So it is a really fine balance when you start putting that operational pressure on individuals to drive different things. But there has to be a trade off of, well, we're going to keep that well-being and employment and engagement where it is, if not higher. So if we want you to be more productive, we're going to automate these admin tasks, or we're going to reduce the burden in this part of the organization to support you in doing that. So again, it comes down to the value exchange. If you as an organization are saying, this is the extra value I need you to create, as an individual, I'm going to say, okay, well, what extra support are you going to give me, or rewards or benefits or structures to make sure we can achieve those.
You touched on stats and reports there. Being an accountant, my ears sort of pricked up there. So, as a business leader or an owner of a small business that have staff, we don't do this. And I think this question is around what things should we measure from an employee engagement perspective? You mentioned there, employee absenteeism, turnover. What statistics or KPIs or HR style measurements should we be looking at measuring in our business to be able to sort of identify if we're doing well or not?
Yeah, I think there's ones that you can use, such as how many days during this week did you wake up and feel like coming to work? All the way through to the other end of the spectrum of, do you see your managers and leaders and individuals across the organization living the values? And I think that about engagement surveys, it's about setting benchmarks, because some organizations might be notoriously low, and some might be quite high, but you use that as a base to look at your areas for improvement. And I think some of the other ones you could do are around rewards and benefits. And if we're talking about flexibility, how are those rated across the organization? And if it does get to a point where those are low, that's where your focus point is for the next little while. Okay, well, we understand that people don't feel supported to be able to work a flexible roster. Why not? What can we actually do within our boundaries? And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a small business, is the boundaries are those that really we put on ourselves. A lot of larger organizations have boundaries that are put on them, and potentially policy ones as well. So you sort of know the box that you have to fit in, but everyone has some sort of box or boundaries, and it's really for you and your workforce to dictate what we're willing to do and why we're not willing to do that within those.
And how often should a business do engagement surveys?
I think every quarter is probably a good time if it's short and sweet. A lot of organizations might do them 6 months and you have your census that's 12 months. I like to have them every quarter, but the challenging part is that if you just do a survey for survey's sake and you're not actually taking any action on that, people aren't going to give you their honest opinions. They're not going to spend the time that you need. So you either make your surveys shorter and punchier, or if they're longer, make sure that the outcomes and outputs from that are meaningful, are objective, tangible, and you come back to everyone with those results and with those next steps.
I'm a big Hawks fan, as you know, Dave, and Sam Mitchell is doing some amazing things with this younger generation. And there's commentary by I'm going to say the older generation, where they're saying Sam's just been able to take this young, youthful group, the millennials, Gen Zs, I'm not sure which generation they fit in, but they're different. Sam's coaching them different. He's hugging them. He's doing different things. And he's been able to unlock this freedom of play. And he's actually letting them celebrate. And some of these older guys are saying, well, we wouldn't let them celebrate like that. And Jack Ginnivan put out, went to the pub the night before, and recently he put a post up on his socials saying, I'm going to see you in 2 weeks' time, when we haven't even won a game yet. And people are saying, well, that's wrong. But Sam's doing something different. He's getting real engagement, you can tell, from this younger generation. I'm in my mid-40s, Dave, and I've got older partners. Some of them have this fixed mindset on the younger generation as being, the woke movement, and, they want everything now. And I love the younger generation. I think that brings a very different, unique energy. They're very driven, and they don't wanna waste time. They don't wanna muck around with BS. That's the thing that I see. What is your take on how can we be like Sam Mitchell, and what's your advice for getting the best out of the younger generation?
I think Sam Mitchell's approach is fantastic for the workforce he's got for that team there, and inspiring them and letting them have that freedom and fun. You can see the fun when they're playing and celebrating, that camaraderie, that culture. The generations is a really interesting conversation, because you can sort of see a clear delineation of buckets of needs and wants and what's important to those different generations that are in the workplace at the moment, with up to four. So I think, again, it comes down to tailoring it and finding what's important to those different cohorts. And if it's a majority, you can go with that for some things, but make sure that there's flexibility. And, one of the examples of that is quite often when we're going through organizations and they might be doing a transformation, there might be up updated ICT or systems and processes. And then the rollout of that is we're going to do everything online or we're going to do everything face to face. The younger generation, they would much rather do something online, listen to it, have a go at time, where potentially the older generation wants someone to sit with them one-on-one, walk them through step by step. So it starts off as sounding like one solution, but when you're breaking it down to what different groups might want, and they'll tell you, if you go out there and say, hey, do we love the fact that our team celebrates after goals? Do we want this to be a fun environment and have that as one of our values? Do we want to have a bit more freedom in the way we play? And that sort of thing, you can keep giving them a bit of length and a bit of lead for while they're winning. And I think he gave them great opportunities to start building that. And then they repaid the faith by absolutely getting on a hot roll towards this part of the season and becoming a formed team.
One of the things in Australia, since manufacturing has sort of left the country and went offshore, and we've become a country very much led around services, and services are produced by people. So the work that you do at Brand Rebellion is awesome. Loved having you on the show. And my last question around is businesses hire people, and you made this awesome comment around people are usually the only differentiators in business. And I believe in order to get the maximum value on that, businesses have to have a great learning and teaching culture and environment. How do we embed learning into our organization and get the best out of our staff?
Education and training keeps organizations agile and progressing, and it keeps things topical. And you remember that feeling you have when you leave a training course, you have this energy of ideas, you want to try and implement things. Here's a framework I want to try now, or I just learned these amazing PowerPoint tips. Look at my transitions that I'm able to do, or gee, that data visualization dashboards made me think of a different way of doing things. And the organization's definitely the ones that can really harness and get those benefits by targeting those sort of training courses. But education and training is really going to be the thing that sets good organizations apart from those excellent ones, because the more that you understand and you're able to absorb information, the more you can be agile and keep pushing forward. Yeah, the other side of that is having a culture of continuous learning. Have that as one of your core capabilities, or have that something that's written around the organization or a value and something that you ask people about. If you have a fortnightly or monthly meeting, ask people, what have you learned in this period? What would you be interested in doing over the next fortnight? That could be as simple as reading an article or writing a thought leadership piece or reading a book or doing a training course.
I love it. David, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners. I love this piece. I'm the managing partner here at AS, Alexander Spencer. I love people. I love seeing people grow. But the one reason that I'm here and one reason I do what I do. So thank you for sharing your expertise around people engagement. You're doing amazing things with Brand Rebellion. And I just wanted to say, you've taken your time out to come on the show today. And I want to make a big thank you from the bottom line. This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952, and we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.